I'm Erin Lucy, and welcome back to my channel. I still am not on my game with videos, but I wanted to do my April reads, so that is what this video is. I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in the month of April. So, it started with Fortuna Sworn. This was the book club pick that my friends and I read, and it's actually like relatively short, so we ended up reading it like within the first week of the month. And then I started on the second one, have not finished that yet, so I won't talk too much about that, but I really love this and I'm gonna continue the series. I ended up getting them all, and it's about Fortuna Sworn, and she's a nightmare, which is super cool. And one of the things that really I think I liked about this book is that was like really unique. Her powers, like her entire being, she's this nightmare. I hadn't really heard much or anything about a character like that. She lives in this world that's like kind of half modern, but there are like, it's modern, but there are creatures and other things. I can't really tell how much other people know about those. But yeah, so she's a nightmare, and I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, her brother disappeared, and she's been searching for him ever since. Classic fantasy trope, I feel like. And one day, well, actually she gets captured by these like goblin things, and this fae, of course, fairy, helps her escape. And later, like, she gets back home, she goes to her work, she works at a restaurant, and the fairy finds her there. I won't use his name actually, but he finds her at her work and has this proposal for her. He's like, I know where your brother is, and if you agree to marry me, I'll help you find him, kind of vaguely. And of course she's like, no, like, but she gets convinced, and she is willing to do anything for her brother, so she agrees to marry him. Doesn't really know much about him or who he is, so there's that. And so he takes her into the Unseelie Court, and that's kind of where we start our adventure. And I won't say anything else because I don't want to give any spoilers, but I really highly recommend it. I really like it. I think it's really, really good fantasy romance series. So yeah, Fortuna Sworn. I'm gonna go in kind of vaguely order of how I read things this month. The next was continuing with the Monsters Ball series, which I started the previous month. So How to Marry a Marble Marquis was like our March, I think, book club read, which is this one. And then I had read the first two in March. And then I read the next three that came out in April. And I said this last month, but the one thing that's nice about this series, it's just like fantasy romance. It kind of gives Ice Planet's Barbarians a little bit, but with monsters. So, and Regency era historical. Very spicy, I will say. But each one is written by a different author, which I feel like kind of prevented it from, like, you know, becoming too repetitive, which I felt like kind of happened with Ice Planets. Is it just like the plot, everything was so predictable that it kind of became a little bit boring. So this did not happen with this. However, the next three that I read, definitely not as good, and I feel bad saying that. They were all a lot shorter, and the writing just wasn't as great. So I think I would pretty much just recommend the first one, which is like that first one that I read. That was probably the best, and the writing was really good. The next three, I was like debating either whether I give like a synopsis, because I don't really remember them very well, but we're gonna, and I have my computer because, again, I don't remember it. Okay, so Romancing the Monstrous Earl. All the books take place in this like Regency era, kind of Bridgerton-esque, except the world, there was this like Queen's Curse where the monster world kind of merged, but at the same time, some humans became monsters. So unclear about that, but that's kind of the premise of this whole series. Is there's this ball that if these human women and some men, if they don't do well or don't find somebody in like the normal balls, then the Queen Charlotte, sends them to the monsters ball. And so all of them take place at the monster ball or have something to do with it. So far, they've all been these like human women and these like monster males of different types. So for this one, what is this one? Oh yeah, so for this one, she's been cursed or promised to some other monster from when she was a child, I guess. And she really doesn't like him, doesn't want to marry him. And so she thinks that the only way to kind of get out of that is to marry somebody worse, more villainous, like a worse monster. Yeah, I don't even know how to, I don't even have the words. It was okay. Yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about this one. So at the monster ball, like she sets her eyes on like the specific monster who's supposed to be really terrible and horrible, but not with the intention of actually falling for him. Okay. Next is probably the one that I think of the three was maybe the best, that I would recommend most. I just thought it was a little bit more intriguing. So for this one, we have our, I don't even know her name. What's her name? Clearly these did not stick with me at all. But okay, Philippa, right? Philippa. Oh yeah, she was engaged, and on her wedding night, her like fiance left her, or husband, I think they were married. Anyway, so that was a while ago, and now she's going to the ball. In the meantime, there's been this monster that has like tormented the area around her estate. So there's that. She's like kind of trying to find this wolf guy who's been tormenting the creatures around her estate, and she thinks she can do that, I think, by going to the monster ball. This one I did probably like the most of these last three. It was just like the plot was a little more interesting, and yeah. So like the worst summaries, I'm sorry. Okay, the last one was by far the worst, and I feel so guilty like talking about books in a non-positive way, but I just felt like the editing, like the writing in this one, it just felt like it had not been edited at all. Like I feel like no one read this before it was published, which is not great. So it was this one, Beguiled by the Beastly Baron. I think that I was like relatively intrigued by the premise, but yeah, it needed like many rounds of editing and did not have them. And it really took away from the whole thing, because multiple times on this one, I was like, I should just stop, but it was really short. So I ended up finishing it. So this is about Antonia, and oh yeah, she's like she's overseas or something like that. She's like living, I want to say it's Brazil, away from England, and the queen like demands that she come to this ball. She does. She comes to England after her father dies. The queen asks her to come find a husband, so she goes reluctantly. And I think there has to do with something in this one of like her being also promised to somebody, but then not following through and marrying him. And then there's this like unseelie king, I guess, who, yeah, I'm not gonna say anymore. I won't spoil it if you do choose to read it, but I struggled with this one like so much. Okay, done with the Monsters Ball. So I did end up, I think I got them like all at, or at least like the last 4 at once or something like that. So I do have this one, which I'll probably read because like I bought it on Kindle, but I probably won't spend any more money on these. It just didn't feel, I don't know, I feel like the writing has gone downhill, and they're really short now too. So I feel like, I don't know what it was. I mean, I don't have Kindle Unlimited, so I think it was like $5 for like, one of them was like 70 pages and not great writing, and I was really disappointed. So there's that, but I will probably read this one because it's a little bit different and I already got it. So there's that. All right, let's talk about some better reads. Okay, what do we have next? We have Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. And I had seen this, like I haven't actually heard anybody else talk about this book, but I had seen it at like the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, our other like independent bookstores. Like I'd seen it a bunch and was really intrigued because I do love me a dystopian or some sort of post-apocalyptic apocalypse book. So I was really intrigued, but I was trying not to buy more books and I caved. It was like halfway through the month, I think. And I bought it. It is about this plague, kind of. Yeah. So essentially we follow Shanna, who is this girl. She's a teenager and she has a sister she really cares about. And the sister, one day, she just like starts walking and like stops responding to any sort of outside stimulus. So she just starts walking. Several others like join her, and it's like this kind of weird, like almost like zombie-like behavior. Like she can't talk to her. She doesn't respond to anything. No idea what's going on. It's very bizarre, strange, and no one can figure it out. So this doctor, Benji, is the other character that this follows. I mean, it follows quite a few characters, but Benji and Shanna are like kind of the main people that this follows. And Benji is a doctor who works for the CDC. He does like infectious disease stuff. And he had actually been kind of like completely like let go from CDC for some sort of not entirely truthful stuff that he did on a different case. I don't want to say too much because it's kind of relevant to the rest of the story, but yes, so he is like called in to this project by somebody who is working with this AI called Black Swan, and Black Swan like essentially like says bring Benji, like Benji's the person to like work on this case. So Benji gets brought on, starts working, trying to figure out what's going on with these people who are like just walking. It's very bizarre. There's some weird stuff, like they can't even like stick a needle in them. Okay, I'm editing this video and I just had to add a little bit more about the plot here because I didn't say that it starts off this girl, the sister who starts walking. They're like in Pennsylvania, somewhere in the east of the US, and she just starts walking west, and they're like walking across the country. And so the whole story is like following them, the wanderers, these people who cannot respond to anything, following them and all the people trying to like investigate and their families and stuff like that. It all comes together. I feel like it sounds really weird and strange, but I really liked it. There's so much like interesting political commentary. There is a really huge kind of towards the middle and end, a huge plot line to do with like this white supremacist group and them trying to take over during the apocalypse, of course. So hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but I feel like that's like worth knowing going into it. It was very horrifying to some degree and disturbing, but also so weird, the timing of this book. I think I looked it up. He like published it in late 2019, which is crazy because I feel like it was just so weird that then COVID took off and there was a lot of like weird political stuff that happened in the following year. It felt like so weird. Like I can't imagine having read this like right when it came out in 2020. I feel like I would have been really freaked out, but I thought it was really good. I thought that it brought like the real world again, like these politics and stuff like that. It brought everything in really well. AI, like just like so relevant for like right now and super intriguing and interesting. But there are definitely some sides of it that are super depressing. So I really loved it. I loved it. The ending, like everything, so good. I actually ended up ordering the next book, which just came out in the fall. I think it's called Wayward, which I'm hoping to read very soon. So, Wanderers. And then we have Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Kingdom of Ash is the final book. I'm not sure. Okay. Kingdom of Ash is the final book in the Throne of Glass series, which I've been trying to work my way through since like last fall. And it's been a little bit rough for me. I feel like I am a big Sarah J. Maas fan. Love ACOTAR, love Crescent City, but I have struggled so much with Throne of Glass. Particularly the first like 4-ish books. I think it's just like because it's YA, it definitely like I feel that. Didn't love it. I don't know. I feel so bad like hating on it because I do really like Sarah J. Maas, but overall I really struggled with Throne of Glass. And I probably like if I was gonna reread or tell someone, like I don't know that I would put the time and effort in. It just like felt like I had to get through so much that I didn't like to get to the last few that I really liked. So I felt obligated to read it though because of the Sarah J. Maas universe. If you know, you know. And so I'm glad in that sense that I read it, but I do feel like I don't know what the draw is for a lot of people. It feels like people like liking it or often even like it more than ACOTAR. And I just did not feel like even remotely close to that, which was interesting. I just feel like the main character is so unlikable. And I just feel like even towards the end where she starts to become better, it's not really explained like how or why like people follow her, even though she seems like really, I don't know. She also goes through a lot of stuff, so I feel like bad hating on her, and she does go through a lot of growth, but I just did not vibe with it, and I didn't really understand. It felt like the character building for her character, I don't know, it just like didn't make sense to me, like how she acted, and it didn't, yeah, so there's that. But I will say the last three, the dual read I did, and then this one, I did like this a lot. It's just like it took so much to get there. And I mostly liked the last three for the other characters, not for the main character. So I really love Manon. I love her. And I really like Dorian and Nesrin and who else? Just like all the other characters. Elide and Lorcan, I really like them all. I just did not like the lead. I also felt like the Fae male in this, like the male lead, like people rave about him. This is like a mini spoiler because this takes place like later, so if you haven't read the beginning books, but Rowan, everybody raves about Rowan. And to me, he doesn't even hold like a candle to someone like Recent. I don't know, such a hot take, I guess, but like just some of his behavior for like a whatever 300-year-old, I don't know, you're supposed to be like wise, but I feel like he just like gives in to everything that the lead says and is willing to do anything to protect her, which like I get that's totally a trope, but like, I don't know, it felt so ridiculous and like unbelievable to me. I didn't like it. Anyway, very hot takes about Throne of Glass, but overall, like this last book I did like. I don't know, the whole series as a whole compared to others, I just like don't understand the hype, I think. So yeah, there's that. And I will say I actually liked the dual read better, so the previous two, and this one was like really good, but I feel like people rave about this, like this is like the most amazing Sarah J. Maas book, and I just like, I don't know, it feels like a lot of battle and a lot of that just like did not. Also I will say this is maybe my most like not constructive, but I feel like non-biased opinion about it is that I feel like this book should have been 2 books. I know that it's already like, what, how many pages is it? Like almost 1,000 pages, 984, something like that. But it felt like really rushed. It felt like we like came to this point in the series where this was gonna be like, all the stuff is actually happening, you know? And it just felt like we were rushed through some of the reasoning, some of the decisions that were made, and everything like was just pushed into here, which I didn't understand because I feel like it really could have been split up into 2. You could have followed the characters from the previous ones a little bit more and understood actually what was going on, why people were making the decisions they were. So anyway, hot takes. I'll stop talking about Sarah J. Maas. Okay, what else did we read? So we read so many huge books this month. Wanderers was also like 800, almost 800 pages. And then I will talk in a second about 1Q84 as well. But before I do that, I will talk about An Immense World by Ed Young, which is nonfiction that I listened to, loved so much, highly, highly recommend. It is about the animal world and like other sensory systems. It just like made me think so much about trying to see like how we see the world as humans versus like, it's like almost like impossible to understand how any other species truly experiences the world. Just like their senses are so incredibly different that it's so hard to like think about that. It was so good, and it just made me so much like good perspective on the world, animals, and our kind of like anthropocentric view of life, and how we always like put this like human, like how we see things is how everything sees things. It was so cool though. It gave like all these different cool examples of research being done in different species. And I learned so much, and it was just really interesting. So highly recommend In the Men's World, which I actually picked up because my friend, some of her work is in the book, which was really cool. That was fun to read about. Okay, the last book, I need to hurry it up, is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. And this is like not entirely fair because I read this throughout the course of like over a year. I just happened to finish it this month. I have to look because this one's also huge. This one's by far the longest. I think it's almost 1,200 pages, maybe like 1,150 or something like that, but so long. I will say technically it's 3 books in one, but I don't know. I guess I thought most people would just like read it in this book, which is all of them together. So in theory, I actually read the first 2 like pretty early on, like last year, and like maybe the first half, and then this last book took me just like forever to get through. Not because it's bad. I really like this book. I love Haruki Murakami's writing. I've talked about this before, and I know there's some controversial things with him. It's just hard because I love his writing. I think that he's one of the most brilliant writers and just so good. And I think this one was really good. I loved it, but I will say if you are interested in reading 1Q84, then I highly recommend reading something else with Murakami's first, because this is just like huge and a lot to dive into. I read After Dark and The Elephant Vanishes, some other things. Something short. He has a lot of other short works, and like seeing if Murakami is for you because his writing is really specific. I really love it, and I feel like there is like a huge fan base out there that like loves it. But there's a lot of people that kind of feel a little bit more indifferent to it. So I just recommend doing that first because I feel like his writing is a huge reason I read this. I did really like the premise as well. So essentially it is about these 2 characters, Tango and Aomame. I always pronounce her name wrong, even though they tell you like 8 times how to pronounce it. And it like alternates points of view between those 2. And actually it adds a 3rd point of view in the 3rd book. And it is this very strange story. It basically begins with Tango, who's a writer, and he ghost writes this story with this other character, and who like had all the ideas for it, and she had written like a draft, and she's really young, like 17, and she writes the story, and he ends up ghost writing it, like writing the rest of it, and it sends them all down this like path that is really hard to explain. Essentially it has to do with them being in like this slightly different world. That's why it's called 1Q84, because at a point they realize they're like not really in 1984, the year. It's like slightly different, and a huge part of that is that there's like 2 moons in the sky, and they're trying to figure out like what is happening. Don't really know what's going on. It's very bizarre. The writing, of course, is really good. I really enjoyed it. It took me a long time because I think for some reason I couldn't read a ton at once. Like I loved almost every second of reading it. I just would read like a couple chapters at a time and then just like take a break. I feel like part of me was like kind of savoring it. Yeah, so it's just like a little bit slower, but I really enjoyed it. This was also super interesting because like the music component in this was like huge. Every time I heard like they mentioned something, I would like add it to this playlist I have. It's like a 1Q84 playlist. So I won't talk too much more about this book, but I did have like a vlog. I basically vlogged this reading experience throughout the past year, which is crazy. I know I didn't expect it to take that long, but hopefully that'll be out probably in June. I have a couple other vlogs that I'm working on right now, so it's not my like number 1 priority, but I will get that out. And that has like a lot more detailed thoughts about the plot and about the book itself. So yes, did a lot of like annotating and tapping because so many things in this book just like, I don't even know, mess with your mind, what is going on. Things felt like a little circular, but also you have no idea what's happening. So yes, 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. So I believe that was it for my April reads. It was like a decent reading month. I feel like I really need to get out of this like Monsters Ball series because I feel like it almost like led me into a slump reading those last 3 because I just was like struggling. I don't know. But this month, May has been really awesome, so I'm really excited for that wrap up at the end. I feel like read a lot of great books. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you are having a good day.